I'd like to welcome you to this short little drawing video where I will be guiding you through the process involved in creating this simple little drawing using charcoal on pastel paper. And our model for this video is going to be my grandmother Victoria, and I'm going to keep an image of her to the top left corner of your screen so you can refer to that image as the drawing develops. We're going to start off this charcoal sketch, just trying to figure out the top of the model's head, just trying to figure out where I want to place it onto the paper. So I'm moving it up a little bit. And we're working with, I believe it's called Fusains Nitram. I think that's how you pronounce it, charcoal, Fusains charcoal. And so I'm going to type all the information as far as the materials are concerned in the description box below. So if you're curious as to what materials I'm using for this short little drawing video, you can go ahead and scroll down and I'll have all that information typed up for you. So we're starting off with a simple envelope. Even though we're going to be pretty much just creating a little charcoal sketch, I still want to have some degree of accuracy in terms of the outside shape. So now I'm just trying to think of the general envelope, meaning the most simple straight lines and angles that encapsulate the entire model. And I should say in the beginning, holding the charcoal from the furthest distance to the back, and I'm trying to stay a little bit further back as I place in these simplistic shapes. And I'm working by eye, so I'm not making any finite measurements just yet. Sometimes you'll see me start off making measurements right away. Other times you'll see me work in this fashion that's a little bit more laid back, just throwing out a bunch of straight lines and angles as to depict what the model is doing. So now we have the corner of the side of the neck, just a simple straight line across there. And here's the side of the face. And we're going to make another little mark there. And so it's important to not press down so hard, especially when you're just getting started. So now we have another little mark there for the ear. And I will say that the paper is toned with a little bit of charcoal. So what I did was when I sharpened this piece of charcoal, I took the extra bits of charcoal that fell off after sharpening, put it on a piece of paper towel, and just toned the surface, and that's all I did. And so it was a very simplistic straight lines and angles. You can already get an idea of where the entire head is going to be placed, and we're only 3 minutes into the drawing and we've already gotten this far. And so again, it's nice to really loosen up once in a while, especially with a simplistic charcoal drawing like this. Alright, so now we have a very fine line there for the center line of the head. And now we're going to place the axes of the eyebrows and the axes of the eyes. And the angle of the eyes will be the most important angle. So that is the angle between the corner of one eye straight through to the corner of the other eye. That angle must be as accurate as possible, and for now we're just trying to gauge that by eye, but we will be checking that angle, making sure that it's correct to the most specific degree of accuracy possible. So now we're just going to make a little mark there for the accents. So we have the accent of the eyebrow, the accent for the nose, and an accent for the bottom of the chin. And here we have a little shape for one eye, and we're going to follow through to the other side for the shape of the other eye. So I'm right away I'm noticing that the angle is such that the it's very acute. It's not horizontal, but it's an extremely acute angle. That is, it's a very small angle change where the eye to the right of your screen is just tilted up a little bit more than the eye to the left. Now we're using a vertical gesture. Notice how we're making a little vertical gesture there to place the bottom of the nose. And again, all of this is by eye and just trying to work from general to specific. But we're going to switch to specificity a little bit faster than my previous drawing videos, if you've seen my previous drawing videos. So now we're starting to etch in a little shape there for the shadow shape on the side of the eyebrow. And now we're just going to follow the side of the eye socket very simply and following around the bottom of the eye. We don't want to take a long time with this. We really just want to have fun with this charcoal sketch, trying to loosen up a little bit. Now we have the outline of the side of the cheekbone, the zygomatic region, and now we're just going to go ahead and fill in the charcoal. And I will say one thing about this charcoal. The Fusains Nitram charcoal was recommended to me by many of you, so thanks for those recommendations. And I will say that this charcoal is much nicer than the regular medium vine charcoal that I use. And again, all of that information will be typed up for you in the description box below, so if you want to know exactly what charcoal I'm using, that information will be given to you in the description box below, along with the paper and the rest of the materials that I'm using. So now we are just trying to find the simple light and shadow shape for the nose, just trying to give us the shape of the bulb of the nose and the wing of the nose. And we're etching in the little shadow there. So if you notice, we're trying to place the eyes and the nose first before committing too much to the mouth. The mouth is a little bit easier to move if it's placed incorrectly, but the eyes are very difficult to move. The nose is a little more difficult to move, not as much, but the mouth is probably one of the easiest features to move around, if I'm going to be honest. Alright, so now we have the little bottom of the chin. Very simple little shadow shape there for the bottom of the chin. And all of these proportions are being made by eye. I'm pretty much just eyeballing this, but don't worry, we're going to check the proportions later on. Sometimes you'll find that having an energetic start, such as this one, we're only 7 minutes and some seconds into the drawing in real time. Sometimes having a very quick and fluid start using straight lines and angles in this way can lead to some very accurate and simplistic marks, believe it or not. So now we're just etching in, and we're going to fill in the rest of the shadow shape, and from this point on we're going to start to build a little bit more of the specificity now. So here we are in close-up. Now you're going to see very definitive marks now. So the corner of the side of the eye socket now, we're really trying to lock that in place. And again, I'm constantly sharpening the point of the charcoal, trying to make it a very sharp point so that I can make some very specific marks. So now the next thing I'm going to want to do is dig the charcoal into the paper so that it can be a little bit more smooth. And so you just saw me use a little stump for that. And now we're going to start to subtract some of our lights. And so I'm using a kneaded eraser to subtract the lights. And this is a very quick and simple way to obtain a nice and simplistic and harmonious value range. And so remember, the sheet of paper is toned with the charcoal. And the charcoal, remember, I got from just sharpening my charcoal stick and just wiping some of that charcoal residue onto the paper with some paper towel. That's all I did. And so now you can see we're very simply starting to carve out some of the planes here. So this plane change right here is for the cheekbone. Remember, plane changes indicate value changes. Value changes indicate plane changes. They go together. And since we're not dealing with color here, it's going to be much more simple to understand. So every little plane that I'm erasing with the light, remember, a plane is just a conceptualized idea of a flat surface in three-dimensional space. Each little area that I touch with the kneaded eraser is a plane change that is angled closer to the light source. Now then, we have the little mark there for the highlight of the nose, the shadow shape of the nose, and we're placing in some half tones for the nose. So you can count it: highlight, middle light, shadow, half tone. Those are 4 significant values that can give you pretty much a very good depiction of form from a distance. And especially when you're trying to make a very quick sketch, especially in charcoal. Let's face it, sometimes we just want to work very quickly and just sketch. So with this sketch, we really want it to read its best from a distance. Now we're going in with this little stump, and you can see that we're working back and forth, putting in the charcoal, or sorry, placing the charcoal on the paper and using the stump to try to push it into the little texture of the paper. Now we're going to peel out some of the lights for the forehead. And so this method of drawing is also known as subtractive. So we're subtracting the lights as opposed to building them from a white sheet of paper. Instead, we're subtracting the lights. Now the kneaded eraser, you want to make sure that you have a very clean kneaded eraser. Remember, kneaded erasers are very much they have the consistency of Play-Doh, so you really want to have a nice and fresh and clean kneaded eraser that doesn't have too much grease on it. And so now we're just placing in some little dark accents for the bottom of the nostrils, the bottom of the wing of the nose. And so we're just going to be stumping in some more of the charcoal, just trying to unify the texture. And here's the little corner of the side of the nose, very simplistic in nature. And now we have a little light here for the bottom of the side of the chin, and we're just subtracting and kind of drawing at the same time with the kneaded eraser. If you notice, the kneaded eraser is kind of rolled into a point, and that's just to help me draw with the kneaded eraser. I like when I can make a point out of the eraser that I use. And now again, we're going to start to place in some little lines here for the glasses. And so the glasses are going to be resting very close to the nasal bone. So the top of the nasal bone supports the middle of the glasses. Now we're going to work with the corners of the glasses. So the corner to the right. Now we're going to follow through and place the corner to the left. And glasses are very tricky sometimes. Sometimes you want to put less, sometimes you want to put more. In this case, we're going to put less. And so we have the little cast shadow on the left of your screen of the glasses, and here we have the little dark accent to the right. And now we're going to switch into the eraser and subtract some of the lights. And this is a very quick and simple way to get the effect of glasses. So that is very simplistic marks that we're making with the charcoal and subtracting a very simple line there with the eraser. And that's pretty much all we're going to do at this point for the glasses, just very much just light and dark. And remember, the trick is that this reads in a distance. We're just subtracting a little bit more for the side plane of the cheekbone, and we're going to stump in there. Now the stump, remember, it's very useful for pushing the charcoal into the paper and making it a little bit more smooth. And of course, constantly sharpen that charcoal to create even more smooth transitions, because when you're working subtractively, the drawing can get kind of rough if you don't stump it and if you don't use a very sharpened point for your charcoal. Here we have a little more light for the bottom of the chin, and we're going to be articulating these lights, trying to make them a little bit more subtle. So here we're pushing in the side of the cheek. Very simple. Now we have the corner of the neck, just making a little comparison by moving the charcoal around, really trying to work the big picture here in a very simplistic manner, still trying to keep the specificity, however. So now we're just going to start to etch in the shadow shape for the hair. And this area of the hair is actually in light, but the value is going to be darker than the shadows. So this area right here is in light, yet still the local value is darker than the shadow on the side of the face. Here we have the little corner for the side of the neck using a very simplistic and strong straight line. Let's use a horizontal from the bottom of the nose all the way to the bottom of the ear. So let's say that the bottom of the ear is around there. Now we're going to etch in some more of the dark value. And when you make these marks with your charcoal or pencil or whatever you do, try to make your shading in a diagonal direction. It's kind of a little more aesthetically appealing to have diagonal shading as opposed to shading that's strictly horizontal. And we're going to add just a little touch for the jewelry. So our model's wearing a little earring there. And so instead of trying to finally draw in the outline of the earring, we're just going to use the kneaded eraser and some of our charcoal to get the effect of the jewelry. And so now we're in close-up, and I will say that the paper does move a little bit, so I'm sorry about the paper moving as I'm making these marks. So what I'm doing is I'm applying the charcoal and then I'm stumping it to push the charcoal into the paper as much as I can to make the surface as smooth as I can. This will never be as smooth as a graphite drawing. And so that's why I encourage you to make very quick sketches with fine charcoal. But if you want to make a very tight and highly refined drawing, then I would suggest using graphite. But in any case here, we're trying to make the surface as smooth as we can with the stump. And the texture of the paper is also kind of a thing. I would suggest using pastel paper if you're going to be working in the subtractive manner like this. As you can see in close-up, the texture of the paper is picking up the charcoal very nicely. And this kind of drawing would be very difficult if the grain of the paper was a little more smooth. The charcoal would be slipping everywhere. Instead, you can tell that the charcoal is gripping onto the paper. It's not really falling off as much. And so that's what I want you to get out of this close-up shot as I start to make the value transitions a little bit more smooth. I just want you to see how the charcoal is actually adhering to the grain of the paper very nicely here. And so we're going to just adjust these little transitions and try to create more subtlety. And remember, subtlety is obtained when your values can be pushed close to one another, yet still remain differentiated. And so we're just going to smoothen out the little value transition there on the eyelid. And now we're going to just push the light on the corner of the side of the eye. So this is the zygomatic region. So that is the cheekbone region surrounding the eye socket. That's going to be picking up a little bit more light. So you can see making a mark with the eraser and then switching back to the stump to try to make that transition as smooth as I can possibly make it. And we're going to do it again over here near the eye socket. So we're going to peel out a little bit of highlight, and then we're going to go back in with the stump. That also adds a little bit of charcoal and helps us adjust the value as well. So now we're going to apply some more value changes onto the nose. So here we have the corner of the side of the wing of the nose, and here we have the corner of the cheek right about here. And it's really cool that I think you can see the grain. Hopefully you can see the grain of the paper and how the charcoal is sticking onto it very nicely. And again, I'm sorry that the paper is moving. It's moving on my drawing board, so I apologize for that. And now I'm going in with the eraser, and I'm going to pick up some charcoal, thus creating the light plane for the nostril. And then I'm going to add more charcoal onto it with the stump, and at the same time make that transition a little bit more smooth. So I'll repeat myself. In order to create a lighter plane, I subtracted first with the eraser and then made it a little bit more smooth and dark with the stump. And now we're going to do the same thing with the top plane of the nose. You can see how we're subtracting a little bit. Now we're switching back to the stump, and we're pushing the charcoal into the paper with the stump. Very much back and forth, eraser, stump, eraser, stump. And this is how we're building the subtlety onto this charcoal sketch. And again, we're just trying to make the bulb of the nose a little bit more smooth. So we covered that area, and we're going to push the value for the shadow by adding a little bit more charcoal, thus kind of increasing the contrast as well. And now we're going to go back in and reapply that highlight, trying to dig the kneaded eraser in there. And you never really get back to the value that you had for the paper. And so sometimes you'll see many artists use white pastel and to get the highlights back. But I'm just trying to stick with the tone of the paper with the charcoal instead of using white pastel. And so now we're going to do the same thing with the other side of the wing of the nostril. We subtracted a little bit with the eraser, and we're making the transition much more smooth with the stump. And again, we're going to go ahead and stump the shadow of the bulb of the nose again, just trying to create more and more subtlety. Even though this is going to be a quick sketch, we still want there to be a little bit of subtlety and specificity into the drawing. So now we're just going to be reinforcing this little plane change here for the side plane of the nose. I don't want to forget that. So there's going to be a plane change there for the side of the nose. And remember, the plane change is indicated by the value change. So each mark of the charcoal or of the eraser is going to create a plane change. So now we're just going to go ahead and stump that shape there for the side of the nasal bone. We're just going to stump it in there. And that should be enough to describe the form of the nose at a distance. A very simplistic way and a simplistic approach towards doing that. Now we're going to move to the mouth. So we're going to work our way from the bottom of the nose to the philtrum and then to the mouth. So here's the little light that we're picking up for the side of the mouth, the side of the orbicularis, oris for the mouth. So that's just a fancy way of saying the structures that encompass the mouth. And so we're subtracting with the eraser, and at the same time we're drawing with the eraser. So we're making that light and shadow change even more specific. And now we've worked our way to the philtrum of the mouth. So this little shape right here is known as the philtrum of the mouth. And you can't really see it. It's not too evident in the photo reference, so we're not going to make it too evident in the drawing. So again, with the eraser, we subtracted and made the shadow shape a little bit more refined. Now we're going to go and make the plane changes much more smooth. Now we're going to subtract a little bit of light for the bottom of the mouth, and again we're going to try to make it smooth with the stump. And the stump at this point is kind of seasoned. It's very nicely seasoned. And so that means that the stump has been seasoned basically with the charcoal that we've been applying onto that stump. So you'll find that your stumps are going to kind of get better and better the more seasoned they become, in my opinion. So now we have the bottom of the mouth, a little shadow here for the bottom of the lower lip, and again we're going to push the charcoal into the paper to try to make the transition even more smooth. Very simple, very easy to do. And now we're just going to again make a little vertical gesture here to make sure that we place the mouth according to the center line of the face. So that is, we want to make sure that the root of the nose lines up with the center of the mouth. And so we're going to fill in the charcoal first, and now switch again to the stump. Again, just trying to make sure that the mouth lines up with center line, so we don't have a mouth that's kind of falling over to the side of the face. We don't want that. And so now we're just going to subtract a little bit more light here as this plane is facing the light a little bit more. And the eraser is a good way to create a sharp edge as well. Notice that the cast shadow of the nose is a much sharper edge than the other edges. And we created that sharp edge with the kneaded eraser. And we're just going to soften this little transition with the stump. And we're just going to soften even the side of the mouth a little bit. Just trying to adjust the edge work here. And let's even soften the shape a little bit more. And I don't often do this, but as you can tell, the grain of the paper is working really well with this technique. And the charcoal is working really well also. And so the combination of this paper and this charcoal that I'm using, I think it's probably one of the best experiences that I've had with charcoal. So I will highly recommend the paper that I'm using, and I will highly recommend the charcoal that I'm using. And again, all of that information will be typed in the description box for you. So let's go ahead and double check our proportions. So the hairline to the eyebrows is a tiny bit smaller than the eyebrows to the bottom of the nose. And now the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin, that measurement is a little bit off. So the bottom of the chin needs to get further down. And don't worry, mistakes are part of the process. I'll repeat myself, mistakes are part of the process. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and double check that measurement. So the nose does go a little bit further down. And now we have made sure that the chin is where it needs to be. Now let's go ahead and double check the angle between the eyes, the angle of the nose, and the angle of the mouth. Everything seems to be matching up. Now again, this is a sketch, but I want to get the proportions as accurately as I possibly can. And now we're just going to put some more information in for the hair. And so here we have the top of the head again. And don't worry, we'll double check that measurement. But we have the top of the head with the hairband, and we're painting in the dark shape for the hairband. And here we're going to just etch in the side of the corner of the hair. So this value needs to get a little bit darker. So just making this value on the corner a little bit darker. And we're going to come back in and adjust the outside shape of the hair with the paper towel that we use to tone the paper. So again, this is the paper towel that I use to tone the paper. And so I'm using it just to get the outside shape a little bit more accurately. And now, again, let's check that measurement. So that distance from the axis of the eyes to the top of the head, as you saw, was larger than the axis of the eyes to the bottom of the chin. And that distance was larger because the model's head is tilted down in perspective. So that's why we're seeing more of the top side of the model's head. And again, we're seeing more of the top side of the model's head because the model is tilted down. All right, so now we're going to be making these value changes a little bit more evident here for the hair. Now in the photo reference, that looks almost pretty much straight black, but in the drawing and in nature, it would not be straight black. So I'm going to go ahead and make it darker, but not as dark as it appears on the photo reference. It's important not to copy the photo reference, but rather to take what information you can from the photo reference and do the best you can with it. But I wouldn't recommend copying it. And so we just soften the edge for the hairline. So we're softening the edge for the hairline, and now we're going to be subtracting some highlights for the hair. And just very simplistic little touches there, indicating the planes of the hair that are in light. And so now we're switching to a very soft little paintbrush to suggest some of the little curved shapes of the hair wrapping around the top of the model's forehead. So again, that was just a little soft paintbrush that we used to etch in the little shape for the corner of the hair. And now we're going to go ahead and again make this shape as specific as we possibly can, and subtract a little bit of the highlights for the hairband. Not really going to put too much emphasis on the hairband, but we are going to suggest it a little bit in this drawing. So again, just trying to relate the corner of the side of the hairband to the bottom of the hair. And again, just trying to fill in that shadow shape, making it as clear and understandable as possible. And let's let some of these charcoal marks show through. So I'm not going to make everything as smooth, so I'm going to leave some of the texture of the charcoal to show through, and even some of the marks on the corner of the side of the hair. Notice we're going to just draw in just a little simple outside shape, kind of a calligraphy. We're kind of using a little bit of calligraphy to the touch here for the charcoal. And the same thing on the bottom of the hair. So especially when you're trying to do a portrait sketch, try to keep in mind and select which outlines you want to leave be, which outlines you want to show, because you do want to leave some outlines. And now we're going to just take some of the charcoal off the forehead to again make that shape more simple, and we're going to subtract even more here for the lightest plane on the top of the forehead. So a little more pressure to subtract more, and a little less pressure to subtract less. Alright, so look at this shadow shape right here. There needs to be a cast shadow for the bottom of the glasses, but I don't like the way the cast shadow looks on the photo reference. So instead, I'm going to edit what I'm looking at, and I'm going to make the cast shadow for this area of the glasses a little less obvious. So I'm going to draw in the cast shadow very much in this fashion, looking like an L shape being casted from the glasses, as opposed to what the cast shadow looks on the photo reference. So this is how we're editing what we're observing. And so that's pretty much going to be the final little touch here that we're going to apply to this charcoal sketch. Remember, it's a very simple and loose and quick sketch, and I encourage that you draw as many little portrait sketches as you possibly can, and I think it kind of helps with your long-term studies as well to do a couple short-term sketches. So let's just sharpen this edge here on the side of the face, and I think that's pretty much going to be it for this simple little charcoal video. So let's just sharpen that edge. We're going to just apply a little bit more charcoal to the hair surrounding that sharp edge. And there you have the conclusion of this quick and simple little charcoal sketch. And again, if you want to know exactly which materials I used to create this charcoal drawing, go ahead and scroll down in the description box, and I'll have all of that information typed up for you. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you the best in all of your artwork, and I'll see you on the next video.